that the press has been notified?
Yes, we have a quorum and the press have been notified.
Okay. So I think everybody's had a chance to look and consider the minutes from the meeting held March 27th, 2025. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion that they be approved.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. And we have a motion. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, so Mary Beth Smith, do you want to talk about the approval of the amendments to the KHC administrative plan?
I would love to. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself for those who may not know me. I am Mary Beth Smith, the Managing Director of KHC's Tenant Assistance Programs. And today I am seeking approval for updates to the Housing Choice Voucher Program Administrative Plan. Although the program is heavily driven by federal regulations, there are areas where we are allowed to set discretionary policy, and the admin plan is a compilation of those policies. I do want to point out that we sometimes do include direct regulatory language, and we do that as a reference point and training tool for program staff. So you will see a couple of updates today that are strictly regulatory, and we have no discretion. So in your packet, looks like it's already there. Page 6 is the memo with a list of updates. And so with that, I will just go ahead and get started. Our first set of updates pertain to HUD's Housing Opportunity through Modernization Act, or HOTMA, as it's commonly referenced. HOTMA has been in the works since 2016 and contains in total more than 100 regulatory updates. And I promise we're not going over 100 updates today. We just have a handful to get in for July 1. So our first update involves income exclusions. HUD has updated the list of income types that we must discount or not include when calculating annual income for program participants, and it's strictly regulatory. We have no discretionary policy. Our second HOTMA update includes updated HUD definitions, again, strictly regulatory. We have them included in the plan for staff reference. Our first HOTMA discretionary policy pertains to de minimis errors or errors we may make in rent calculation. If we make an error in rent calculation that requires the tenant to pay a higher portion of rent than they should have, we have to have a policy of how we will reimburse the tenant for the difference that they paid. Options are to pay the landlord directly, who would provide the tenant a rent credit, or to reimburse the tenant directly. And we have opted to reimburse the tenant directly. Our next HOTMA update reflects the sunset of the Earned Income Disregard program, which is a program that allowed those with disabilities to maintain more of their earned income without it impacting their rent portion. However, with HOTMA, that program is ending December 31st, 2025, and this date is now included in the plan. Our last HOTMA update is policy involving the use of the HUD 9886 form, or the Authorization for Release of Information. This form is required to be signed by all adult household members, as it allows us to gather required income and asset documentation. But HOTMA has added an option that families can revoke this consent or revoke this form, and we must state in our admin plan what actions we will take when this occurs. After discussion, we have decided we will terminate assistance when this occurs, because we will not be able to calculate rent portions without the required income and asset information. So that was a quick on the HOTMA updates. Our second set of updates apply to program funding. It is my understanding that you have been made aware of the Housing Choice Voucher Program's designation by HUD to be in a funding shortfall for calendar year 2025. We are still projected to not have enough housing assistance as of today to pay all of our program participants for the full calendar year. We have applied for additional funding with HUD, but we have yet to hear from that application. So the following updates involve policies surrounding the funding shortfall designation and the need to reduce overall housing assistance that is paid for each individual families. I do want to be upfront and clear that some of these changes will require current program participants to pay a higher portion of rent than they are paying right now. But the goal is to maintain enough assistance for all current program participants through the calendar year. So let's jump in. Our first one is KHC has discretion to set subsidy standards that determine the number of bedrooms a family qualifies for based on who is in the household. Until now, we have had a more generous policy surrounding these subsidy standards, as it allowed families to search for a larger bedroom size unit, and it eased their housing search a bit. However, the larger the bedroom size, the higher the housing assistance we pay for that individual family. We are reducing the number of bedrooms a family qualifies for in order to decrease the amount of housing assistance paid for each individual household. Secondly, KHC has
Mary
discretion.
Beth, let me
Yes,
interrupt.
sir. Yes, sir.
Are you doing that because of the potential shortfall at the federal level? Is that the reason we're
Yes.
changing those?
Yes, sir. We are making these changes in an attempt to decrease the overall housing assistance that's paid for each individual family, so we can hopefully maintain enough assistance to pay all of the current participants through the calendar year 2025.
Okay. And on page 35, where it talks about subsidy standards, you're marking most of that out.
Yep.
Can you tell me what that means?
I sure will. Let me pull that up so I can see that too. I deleted what you'll see on there is an edit to the entire current policy and what the new policy is. Let me go back there. It's on page 20, I think. Yes, so on page, it starts on page 18 of your packet, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that first section that is deleted on page 18, page 19 is deleted. That's all the current policy. And the new policy starts on page 20. And so what we are doing is, again, it's making these changes so that where a family may right now qualify for a 3-bedroom voucher, with the change, they may qualify for a 2-bedroom voucher, which leads us to pay less assistance for that individual family.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead.
you're fine. Jump in here. That's what I'm hoping for. So our second funding update pertains to minimum rent, and Kentucky Housing has discretion to set minimum rent or total tenant payment between $0 and $50 per month. So KHC is raising its minimum rent for our largest population of vouchers from $25 a month to $50 a month. And this change will impact about 400 current participants. Recovery Kentucky participants will have a minimum rent increase from $0 to $25 a month. And this will impact about another 400 participants. So about 800 current participants in total will see an impact from the minimum rent increase. However, with this minimum rent increase, it will result in a housing assistance payment savings of about $250,000 annually once the change has been applied to all impacted families. Our next update involves our waiting list preference, as we have discretion to set local preferences. As part of the funding shortfall, we did have to return 105 families to the waiting list that had recently been selected for assistance. So we are adding a waiting list preference that will ensure these families are the first to be selected from the waiting list when funding is available again. Another change is to our voucher search terms, which is how long a family has on their voucher to search for a unit. And although we're not currently issuing new vouchers due to program funding, we are allowing current families to move to new units. So we are reducing the amount of time a family has on their voucher from 210 days to 90 days with an available 30-day extension. And I do want to add right now, about 80% of those that lease within that 120-day time frame. So we're hoping it won't be a huge impact to make this change. But what it will do for us is we are strictly, very closely monitoring leasing rates and housing assistance monthly due to the funding shortfall. And the more families that you have in transition and the longer that they are in transition, the harder it is to stay on top of these things. So we're hoping this change will kind of tighten things, our monitoring up for us. The next update is a tough one. We must set policy on which families to terminate due to insufficient funding. So if after implementing all other housing assistance reduction strategies, we still remain in shortfall and unable to pay housing assistance for all current participants, we will terminate assistance for those families that have been assisted the longest, excluding families that include elderly or disabled household members. And our special population vouchers, which are those that are veterans, disabled again, elderly, those would be the last to be terminated. They are not on our radar for that. And then our last update in regards to insufficient funding is that HUD requires that we set policy on what order we will resume issuance of vouchers once funding is available. So we would begin with the resumption of any special population vouchers. Again, those that have those specific categories that you would have to apply for, be eligible for. Again, the veterans, the homeless, that type, we would issue those first. Next, we would release the suspension of any current housing choice vouchers. With our funding shortfall designation, we suspended around 300 vouchers that families had in their hands at the time, meaning we put those on hold. They could not use them. So these vouchers would be allowed to use whatever time was left on their voucher at the time of that suspension. The resumption of voucher offers from the waiting list would be our last step. And both the resumption of suspended vouchers and waiting list offers would be done in very small increments as funding allows, so we can stay on top of our leasing rate and housing assistance. We're almost finished. We have just a couple of miscellaneous updates. Our next update involves our family unification program, which, as a reminder, the program is for those aged 18 to 24 who are leaving or have recently left foster care, as well as families whose housing instability impacts the return of children to the household or children placed in out-of-home care. There have been some recent regulatory changes that required us to update the administrative plan. HUD has updated the time frame that a youth has left foster care from 90 days to 180 days. And then there are alternative requirements for voucher issuance timeframes and extensions for these family unification voucher holders. Vouchers must be issued for 120 days with a minimum 90-day extension. And HUD now requires that we also reach out to these family unification voucher holders prior to the expiration of their voucher to see if they need our assistance in locating a unit. Our last update pertains to the time frame in which a family must report changes, whether that be in income or in their household composition. we are updating our policy that reporting requirement from 10 days to 30 days. And it coincides with our recent merge to online processing and best practices. And I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. What questions do you have?
Let me ask you a couple, Mary
Okay.
Beth. One is on page 252. You've changed the definition of foster adult. You've struck the guardian member of the family is legally responsible.
Mm-hmm.
So what does constitute a foster adult now?
That is a HUD update. And they are changing it from, they're taking out the guardian member and just saying a member of that household. It's who's 18 years or older under state law, and a person who is 18
Okay.
years of older that is unable to live independently. It just covers them because our family unification program is for those aged 18 to 24. And so I think they're just clarifying that sometimes you do have those that cannot be independent quite yet.
Okay. Another question.
Yes,
All
sir.
these changes are going to bring probably a lot of questions and telephone calls. Has staff been alerted to these changes, and is there a contact person that is going to be able to handle the inquiries? You have to forgive me, but after last week, I'm a little gun shy here.
I understand. I understand. I would be too. I understand. Yes, we do have a contact. We have a customer service call line, and we have the management team that's trying to take these calls. We have individual caseworkers that are responsible for specified counties that are, take the calls for those tenants that are located in those certain counties. So we will do our best to head off those calls for you.
Well, let me ask you this: Would you alert the board to give the name of the contact person and their phone number, so if they do get calls, they can refer to that
Absolutely.
person? Would
Yes.
that be in order?
I
That would
will
be
do that.
okay when it's Sam to do that?
Yes, yeah, I think that's appropriate for us to. We can notify the board of these changes if they're approved by you all today, and to let them know who, if they get questions about them, who at KHC to refer them to.
Okay.
Perfect. Great idea.
Anybody else have any other members have any other questions of Mary Beth?
No, I don't have any other questions, Chair. I just think whenever there's funding shortfalls, you've got to make adjustments, and it's well thought through. So thank you all.
Thank you. It's been a tough one, honestly.
It sure has. I'm sure you worked on this very hard, and we appreciate your effort and your hard work.
Thank you.
And I would suspect, Mary Beth, you've only seen the easy part of it so far. You're going to get a
Yes.
lot of calls. So
Yes.
so anyway. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion. I think we have to have a motion, Sam, do we not?
Yes,
To
yes,
accept
a
it?
motion in a second.
I'll make a
so-
motion.
Okay,
Okay,
Heather
got a motion. Do I
moves
have
and
a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving these changes to the administrative plan, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you so much, Mary Beth.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Okay. All right, Terry Helton, you're up with an inducement resolution for Northern Kentucky SOCAR.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have an inducement resolution for SOCAR Northern Kentucky portfolio. This is a project requesting bonding authority in the amount not to exceed $25,987,000. The project involves the acquisition, rehab, and new construction of 216 units located at scatter sites in Boone and Henry County. The project will serve 20 households at or below 30% of the area median income, 6 households at or below 40% area median income, 5 households at or below 50% area median income and 115 households at or below 60% AMI. And then the 70 households at or below 70%. The 216 units will consist of 56 one-bedroom units and 106 two-bedroom units and 54 three-bedroom units. The development team is listed in the packet below in the middle. And as financing for the project progresses, the board of directors must also authorize the issuance and sale of the tax-exempt bonds through an approval of a separate resolution. Staff has reviewed the preliminary submittals of the applicant and recommends approval by the board of an inducement resolution authorizing the tax-exempt financing for SoClar portfolio project. Does anybody have any questions?
Any members have any questions of Terry on this? And Terry, you do recommend this
I do.
project?
Absolutely.
Okay. And tell us again, the question came up at the last board meeting about Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust. They do a lot of this processing type and buy a lot of these bonds. Is that
Yes,
correct?
they do. They're very well versed in the area of bond purchasing.
Okay. Any other members have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we approve this inducement resolution.
This is Matt Wingate. I'll move.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, Terry, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your hard work. Okay, so Sam, let me see where we are. I've lost my agenda. Here we go.
Next up is the information items.
Okay, all right. I have no information items, but I think Sam wants to discuss the potential a new Kentucky Housing Corporation program, which he has discussed with me, and I think it has a lot of merit. He's got a lot of work to do on it. But Sam, I'll turn it over to you to discuss this thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know I sent you all a memo. I'm just going to provide some brief bullet points. The purpose of this conversation is really to hear your all's initial reactions to it, give you time to consider and to generate whatever questions you might have, so that our goal is eventually to bring this to the board for approval. So I just would like to get your all's thoughts initially, and if you all have questions along the way, be able to come up with answers to those so that we can address them. But just to provide the context here, earlier this year, the General Assembly passed Senate Bill 25, which included a number of changes, but one that is sort of critical to housing and relevant to us is it changed the industrial revenue bond process to allow multifamily developments over 48 units to get access to tax abatements by issuing industrial revenue bonds. They have to issue those industrial revenue bonds and enter into an agreement for a payment in lieu of taxes with the local taxing jurisdiction. KHC is unable to issue IRBs, but we do have statutory authority to offer similar property tax abatements for properties that KHC owns. So the relevant statute is KRS 198A.200, which essentially says that real property owned by KHC is exempt from property taxes, and KHC is authorized to negotiate a pilot. And within the statute, it specifically refers to KHC ownership of a housing development and contemplates KHC owning property for the purpose of developing housing and that property obtaining a tax abatement. So the relevant points I think to note are that the General Assembly has approved this framework as a way to increase the supply of housing and or decrease the cost of developing housing through SB 25. KHC has the authority to confer the same benefits to housing developments as what is contemplated by SB 25, but our conferral of this is not contingent on the issuance of the industrial revenue bonds or any bonds, only to KHC's ownership of the property. So the path that we could offer would reduce the cost of obtaining the tax abatements. As IRBs and the issuance of them, there are costs, there are attorney's fees, there are lots of additional costs associated with that. So KHC staff are working to develop a reasonable program set of parameters and guidelines in order to maximize the effectiveness and protect the interests and the mission of KHC as we're developing this. Some of the things that we're considering include the following: how to structure KHC ownership, including the use of lease agreements to ensure that KHC is protected while minimizing the burden on the developer and the development. The point of this is to reduce costs. So how can we do that while protecting KHC's interests? What types of rental housing development to offer this program to? At least initially, we're looking at offering them to tax-exempt bond projects. So that way you wouldn't have to have two issuances. You wouldn't have to have an IRB issuance and a housing private activity bond issuance. And that reduces the cost and gives these developers access to the same benefit that they would get under SB 25. Another thing that we're considering is how long KHC should own the property. At what point it should revert back to the developer, and how long KHC should offer this program at all. These are all questions that are sort of open for consideration. And like I stated at the beginning, the goal of presenting this to you all is to hear your initial reaction, get your thoughts, your questions, so that we can build the best program possible. And our hope is to have something that's fully vetted and ready to present to the board later on this year for board approval of initiating this program. And we feel that this program, which exercises existing statutory authority and is in alignment with the path that's outlined by the General Assembly earlier this year, could be an important tool in decreasing the cost of housing development and increasing the supply of housing in Kentucky. So if I'd be open to any questions, any thoughts that you all have on this. And if we can't answer those questions today, we will work to answer them in advance of any board approval of this program. Winston, did you have anything you wanted to add? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Sam. No, I think you've done a nice job of summarizing it, and we do think that this will be of assistance to help create more affordable housing and to help with the projects that need greater gap assistance.
So I have a quick question here, Sam. Is
Sure.
this just being presented for informational purposes?
Yes. So,
Okay, great.
we are wanting to get this in front of you all. We're hoping we've had some preliminary conversations with developers about the possibility of KHC doing this. We are probably going to have further conversations. I'm hoping to have a session at the KHC conference in August to discuss it. Trying to get as much feedback as we possibly can. I've asked other states if they offer a similar program, what that could look like. Talking to attorneys, like we're really trying to get all angles on this vetted so that we know what we're getting into as much as we can, and then I'm able to present the best possible program to the full board. And the thought is that we will present this to the full board before we would move forward with it for approval.
So I'm just, it's as counsel to KEDFA that recently received the kind of expansion of the IRB program. I think it might be worth noting, it sounds like there's two distinct types of multifamily housing here. The Senate Bill 25 expands it simply to 48 units or more.
Correct. Yes.
And it doesn't specify affordable housing versus workforce housing types that presumably wouldn't fall within the slate of programming that KHC provides. So I think it might behoove KHC to think of it in terms of we're supplementing, not necessarily competing with the provisions under Senate Bill 25.
Yes, yeah, that's the way we're thinking about it. And that's the way we are approaching it. You know, SB 25 applies to 48 units or more, but what KHC offers could be for affordable projects that are less than 48 units. You know, I think of all of the low-income housing tax credit program projects that we award in any year, potentially could have access to those. The tax exempt bond projects that we that are subject to the private activity bond cap rules and that sort of thing could.
Are you all in your all's ideation phase here? Are you all planning to like obtain outside counsel to help kind of direct or at least offer some sort of guidance on a survey if other states are doing this or recommendations and how to structure it?
Yes. So we've reached out with our current counsel, and we have had conversations with bond counsel. I've asked other counsel from other state HFAs, you know, whether they offer this type of program, what it looks like. We're gonna survey everyone and anyone that we can to make sure that we're doing this in a way that effectively protects KHC.
I'm impressed by what you've kind of outlined here. It's a little bit for me to consume, but I think that anytime you're trying to be flexible to increase housing shortages, and that gap funding that Winston commented on, I mean, I think that it's definitely worth exploring. Um, and it's a lot. The only reason why I asked that is not any uh, uh, criticism of the guidance that you provide us. You do such a good job at, but it's a lot to take on as in-house counsel to kind of contemplate every type of leasing scenario and how this program would work. It's a heavy lift, and I'm glad that you all are going down this avenue to explore creative options.
Absolutely, yeah, and I would anticipate outside counsel being present at the board meeting where we present this for approval to answer questions and sort of lay out their process as well. So,
Gotcha. It always helps to have that, especially comes to making kind of statutory interpretation, and having that outside legal letter to rely upon is always a comforting thing for me, at least.
yes, yeah, I agree.
Matthew, your point's well taken, and this is an issue that Sam and Winston and I talked about last week. But we did this with the Industrial Authority when I was chairman up here, and it worked really well for it. In fact, they're still using it today. You know, some of these smaller deals, it's not feasible to do an IRB.
Yeah.
And so, but they still get the tax abatement. Not only that, they can get a reduced rate of interest a lot of times from, you know, from lending institutions if they have, you know, with that additional security that KHC brings. So, you know, I think it's a really novel idea that Sam and Winston have come up with here. I think I told Sam last week, I thought he was going to have to tier it. What we did, like under $10 million, we did the tax abatement, and above 10, we would do, you know, we would consider IRBs, but it's just not feasible to do an IRB. Probably today, that de minimis would probably be somewhere around 25 or $30 million. But anyway, it works for industrial development. It's got to work for housing development, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. But anyway, I think your points are well taken.
No, no, and in no way am I being critical of this. I think it's a wonderful avenue to approach, and that's whenever Wendy and you and everyone there have done such a great job articulating some of these housing shortage gaps, and have been really vocal on that, and just really adding to your all's credibility to help find creative solutions to help you know bring some more housing stock online is a good thing to definitely pursue.
It's another tool in the toolbox.
Oh yeah.
Any other members have any questions of Sam or comments?
Sam, you'll be sharing that, what you learned from the other HFAs later, I'm assuming?
Yes, yeah, I haven't gotten any responses yet, but I'll let you know.
I'm really interested to see what they do.
Mm-hmm. And this is a function of state statute. A lot of HFAs were created around the same time, and may have some overlapping terms in their state statute, but we may be the only one that has this statutory authority, or there may be some other state framework that is in place. So we'll try to explore it and see what other states do related to this.
Great.
Thank you, Barry. Any other members?
If anybody has any additional thoughts or questions about this that occur, don't hesitate to give Sam or me a call, and we'd be happy to take your thoughts and questions and work with them.
And if you have any ideas about how it could look, or any issues that you think we should look out for, please send them my way, because we really do want this to be as strong of a program as possible.
Perfect.
I think this could really be a novel program, Sam, and I think you really hit on something, and I think you can really make something work out of this. It's not without its pitfalls, but I think you could iron those out. So I'm really happy you're headed in that direction. I think it's a good move. So with that, I think we're down to items from the board of staff that are not on the agenda. Winston, do you have anything that you want to talk about today?
I don't. I'm going to save anything, updates or reports for our full board meeting.
Okay. Sam, you have anything else, or
I don't think so.
can any other members have anything that they want to discuss today? Okay, well then, if Sam, are you and Winston ready for adjournment? Then are you? I hope I'm not moving too fast here.
I am.
Okay, all right. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, have a motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
Okay.